I said, girl, why you keep calling? I said, girl, why you keep calling? Yeah. She said, I need a new whip. Yeah, cause I know that you're still ballin'. She just wanna go back to the future, so I brought that girl a DeLorean. 21 minutes until I gotta go, so I told that girl I'm gonna slaughter it.
You're watching Crank It Up Rap. Go ahead, tell the police they can't unrape you.
Welcome to the Crank It Up show, where I'm one of your co-hosts, Andrew. I'm not here with Jared or Dale because I'm specifically talking about my designated category, which is rap. And for this one, I'm going to do my top 11 favorite rappers. And I want to make one thing clear, as with any subjective list, is that all of this is my personal favorites. This is in no way a ranking of the top 11 of all time. This isn't judging off of album sales or song streams. This is strictly my favorites. And then afterwards, I thought it'd be fun to do a quick little view. I got the official listing of my top 11 most streamed artists, which is different from my personal favorites, and you'll see why. That I'll run through quickly afterwards. But first, let's just jump right into the official top 11 favorites of mine. At number 11, I have Mac Miller, starting with an artist from this generation. Mac was an artist that I knew about during his lifetime, but I was not the biggest fan of him. You know, I first heard of him when the first song by him in my playlist was Self Care, which was the song that came out shortly before he passed. And then I joined the bandwagon, I guess, after his death, and revisiting his catalog. He seems like a very relatable artist for a lot of people, and me too. A lot of people talk about Kid Cudi as someone that's gotten them through some stuff, and I'd say the same for Mac. His song that released as a part of the Faces special edition, God, it might have been last year already, in 2022. Might have been 21. I'm blanking on it. But yeah, it was my personal favorite song of that year. And other songs like, The Star Room, and albums like, Watching Movies with the Sound Off. Just, he's one of my favorites. I don't have as much to say about him because 11th was tied for a lot of different people. But I'm just going to go with Mac because he has different songs for different moods. And I'll just leave it at that. At 10th, though, I'll go to Future. And Future, I didn't know where to put in this list because if I was ranking these 11 guys based off of influence or just normal public opinion, he'd be a lot higher. He's someone who I know a ton of people. I know different corners of the hip hop, internet fan base that would put Future as their greatest ever, and I understand that. Consistent projects year after year, and DS2 obviously. Anyone who's listened to him know that is a crowning achievement for trap music of the last 10 years. And then my personal favorite album of him, or mixtape, technically, Monster, is right up there with my favorite albums ever, not just rap. And, he works best with Metro Boomin. I always love them as a group. And speaking of which, we're going to need that album soon. And they've been talking about it. So we'll see. At 9, I got Drake. He had to be somewhere in this list. Drake, I'm not as big on him as other people are. Obviously, he's a proven hit maker. He's, maybe the biggest artist in the world. My whole thing with keeping him at 9th is that his most recent stuff just isn't for me. Wasn't huge on Certified Lover Boy. Wasn't huge on Honestly Nevermind. I honestly did not like that. But you have his classics, albums like Take Care, with the song Take Care probably being my favorite Drake song. You have Nothing Was the Same. You got, if you're reading this, It's Too Late, which, now I'm thinking that actually might be his best. But Drake, he's classic. We all love him. He has the quotable captions. He can be corny at times, but he, again, similar to Mac Miller and even Future, and I guess all these artists on the list, they really do have songs for every mood, and you can throw Drake on whenever. 8, A$AP Rocky. Now, if you had me do this list about 3 years ago, there's a chance that Pretty Flocka would be number 1, but A$AP Rocky hasn't released an album in nearly 5 years. and I'm getting a little sick and tired of it. And he's barely releasing songs too, unlike other artists higher up on the list. But that being said, I still love Rocky because he has one of the coolest flows of any artist I know. My personal favorite mixtape of all time is Live Love ASAP, from over 10 years ago, which is just crazy to think about. And there's people that don't like Rocky style of rapping. You really have to hear it to know what it is. But always cool, always casual, and he's just had some of my favorite albums ever, even Testing. 7, Lil Uzi Vert, an artist that when I originally made this list, I didn't consider him for my top 10 or top 11. But then the more I looked at my playlist, there are so many Uzi songs in there. He was one of the first rappers I got into back in 6th grade. And you could go on all day. Go the middle school for me classics. Do What I Want, EXO Tour Life, You Was Right, 7 a.m. And go on. 20 Minutes is probably my personal favorite. And then keep going with it all the way up to recently, Eternal Take, or even more recently with Just Wanna Rock. I think he's always consistent. He is I'm looking at this list. He would be, of the big SoundCloud rappers, I'd say he'd easily be my favorite, even though there are a few newer generation guys still on here. And repetitive styles, but I always can rely on Uzi for bangers, and I think most people would agree on that. At 6, I got maybe the least popular artist on here, but still very popular, especially recently. I got JID or JID. He has been floating around my favorites for a while now. His 2018 album DiCaprio 2 is one of my favorites of the 2010s decade, but honestly, just rap as a whole, I'm really biased towards newer albums. And last year, The Forever Story was my personal favorite rap album of 2022. And what was there to be said about him that hasn't been said already? But I will explain, since again, he's probably the least popular out of everyone on this list. He has all sorts of flows for days. He has a recognizable vocal delivery, and he can actually say some real stuff. Despite being in this newer generation, he really doesn't rap about the same things that other people do, which I guess kind of a corny thing to say, because there's other artists out there that you could apply that to that are just awful. But songs like 151 Rum, Surround Sound, which was my favorite song of last year, Working Out, Louder Too. I'm just thinking. I'm just saying I could say all my favorite songs from him, but the best part about Jizz is just his flow delivery. It always gets me hype. Speaking of hype, at 5, we have Denzel Curry, who maybe if you asked me, honestly, at any given time, he could easily be my number 1. He's been consistent with some of the top albums every year that he comes out. And he started out as some people still view him as the Vine or meme rapper because Ultimate was attached to the water bottle flipping challenge. But since then, you have Taboo, which was one of the best rap albums of 2018. You have Imperial, which I think was the best rap album of 2016. I always get confused between 16 and 17, but pretty sure it was 16. But whatever, best rap album of the year it came out. Even last year, Melt My Eyes. You have his little Lucy projects like Unlocked and Blood In, Blood Out. Just always consistent with being able to have lyrics that are, more mental health based. But what I come to him mainly for is the hype and the energy. So that being said, my favorite songs by him, Ultimate, This Life, ULT, Sumo, Super Saiyan Superman. Not everyone's favorites, but they're mine. And Wish, one of my most streamed songs from 2019. At 4, I have Lil Wayne. Now, if this was my list of trying to be more objective, I'd put Wayne closer to number 1. Not too sure. I do view him as the best rapper in the world today, purely from a rapping standpoint. The reason I have him at 4, though, and not 1, is because I am not the biggest fan of all of his music compared to the top 3. Wayne has probably some of the best bars and flows and flow switch-ups that maybe we've ever seen. Maybe not best bars that we've ever seen, but definitely up there with most creative. I think to this day, he still is worthy of that category of these placements because although his solo music hasn't been great these last few years and we're still waiting on the Carter 6, I think his feature runs over the last couple years have been enough to keep him around, Bash Money being probably his best one from West Side Gun's Hitler Wears Hermes 8. 3, I have Kendrick Lamar, probably the face of rap over the last 13 years. I mean, however you want to start counting for him. This one I won't say too much for because, I mean, it's Kendrick Lamar. We all know him. We all love him. Has classics to Pimp a Butterfly, Good Kid, Mad City. Some people even say Section 80. You have the polarizing Damn and the even more polarizing Mr. Morale, the Big Steppers. But I happen to love that one. Yeah, I don't really know what I can say for this one because much better people, much more well-spoken people can tell you exactly why Kendrick is great. But if I was to give you just some songs of his to finish this little part out, I'd say my favorites are Swimming Pool, Rich Spirit was one of, if not my most streamed song from last year, despite not being my favorite. Blacker the Berry, All Right. And I'll just leave it at that. Also, his feature on Imagine Dragons, Radioactive, the remix to that. I know I've seen so much hate for that over the years, but that was what got me into him when I was, in 4th grade maybe? I'm not too sure. And I love it. Swimming Pools is still my favorite, though. At 2, I have Travis Scott. He was my number 1 until I actually thought about my number 1 a bit more. I mean, he's not the best rapper out there, but Astroworld, which it's basic to say it was like a landmark for the culture in 2018. A lot of great albums in 2018, but Travis's combination of drugged out melodies and hype with sometimes sadness on songs like Drugs You Should Try It makes him one of my favorites. And again, maybe even my favorite because it depends on how I compare him to my number 1. Rodeo to me is the best trap album of all time. Birds in the Trap, Sing McKnight is a nearly flawless album that I think a lot of people overlook. And one of my favorite mixtapes ever, Days Before Rodeo. I'd probably say my favorite songs from him are First Take, 90210, The Prayer. Oh God, Hell of a Night I've been listening to a lot more recently. I've said this a lot, so I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but he has songs for really every mood that you want, but I think he does it better because production to not only his vocals, but obviously the beats are very important. We need Utopia soon. And my number 1, my favorite overall musician ever is Kanye West. I didn't really consider him at first because I think of Kanye as more than a rapper, but then the same could be said for Drake. My thing with Kanye is I just think I'm biased towards him. I think he can't do any wrong. My favorite albums of all time, he doesn't have my overall favorite. That will go on a different video because my favorite album of all time is a rap album. But Kanye has My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Graduation, which I will eventually be getting a tattoo for. I can't wait for that. Late Registration. Donda was my favorite album from 2021. He's just consistent. I mean, favorite songs from him. Wow, I could go on for a long time. I could go on for a long time as I could for any of these 11 artists. But I'll just say, Stronger was the song that most people will identify with him, but it's overrated by the fan base, and it's a casual song. I don't care. It's awesome. Come to Life, Hey Mama, Slow Jams, Jesus Walks, Touch the Sky I said it was Stronger, but Touch the Sky was probably the first song I ever heard from him when I was 5 years old. I mean, Runaway's up there for my favorite song ever. He can do it all. He's a genius. You know this already. Again, I could spend 10 minutes on all these artists talking about why they're my favorite, but just for this video, I'm just going to run through them quickly. So that was my list. Again, I'll just run through. It went Mac, Future, Drake, A$AP Rocky, Lil Uzi, JID, Denzel Curry, Lil Wayne, Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, and Kanye West. Before I finish this, I will say that my top 11 most streamed artists, according to Last FM, 11, A$AP Rocky, which compared to 8 on my favorite list. 10, Trippie Redd, who was not featured on my favorites. 9, Lil Baby, not featured. 8, NBA Youngboy, which although I like Youngboy, I will say that the reason he's 8 is because he drops so much music, and I always listen to, first releases so I can put them into my yearly album rankings. And Youngboy recently has been dropping these 20, 30 plus track albums, so naturally I rack up the streams on him. But he is legitimately really good. If I did a top 20, he'd be in there. 7, Polo G. 6, Drake. 5, Playboy Cardi. 4, Brockhampton, which is a group. If I didn't count Brockhampton, I think the next rapper up would have been, I don't know, I could guess. I'm not going to, though. Probably, we'll just say Uzi. That might be lying. 3, Kanye West. 2, Travis Scott. And this is the whole reason why I wanted to do it. My number 1 most streamed rapper ever is Ian Dior, which, again, despite him being my favorite, or my most streamed, he appeared nowhere on my favorites list. Which I will say the reason behind that is because Ian Dior is an artist who joins the new generation, even newer generation of rappers that make short, catchy songs that you can stream easily, and you just come back to replay them. Again, not my favorite because I probably have 10 Ian Dior songs that I really, really, really love, while all these other rappers I've named in my top 11, there's more. So that's my list of top 11. I will say once again, it is all based on favorites. I didn't really have any legendary rappers on there. So I'm sorry for people out there, your Nas, your Tupacs, your Biggies, your Wu-Tang Clans. Yeah, they didn't appear on this list. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't even consider them to appear on this list. So that was mine. All right, and make sure you guys tune in next week to see Dale talk about his top 11 country artists. That's a list I couldn't do. All right, guys. See ya.